welcome to episode 10 of The Common Theory. This is a very exciting time for us. This is kind of like it's a big deal. How about that one? It's a big deal. Um, Obviously, we have a new person here with us, and we will be getting to that here shortly. But I am just very excited here with my man Dallas again, bringing another episode to you guys. And we have our guest with us today, Clay from the Common Connoisseurs and CPDH Guide, and it's very exciting to have you here, Clay.
Thank you for having me.
Of
It's about damn
course.
time.
Yeah.
No
Of course.
kidding.
Of course. So,
No, I could be patient and wait. It's fine. It's fine.
yep. But we have a great episode. So we have some data people here with us, and we are going to be specifically speaking about, which was actually choice by the community as a whole, which I'm actually incredibly excited to have, is the past and present and future of the meta for the Pauper community. So this is a very exciting time for us, especially with the RIW tournament right around the corner. So, I mean, Dallas, hit me off, man. What you got? What do you got for Clay? What do you got for me? Like, hit us off.
Before we do any of that, Clay, you want to introduce yourself? I know Chris gave you a little bit, but if you want to talk about what you do, feel free to.
Okay. So as you both know, I'm never one to ingratiate myself in descriptors or anything of that nature. You can stop smiling, Puzzle. It's okay. uh, so we were talking about this before we kicked off, and I was thinking about it from the perspective of I like to fancy myself a community organizer. So I feel like I'm doing the things that I can do to empower other people to play the game that they want to play. So having had the opportunity to have a 5-minute, opportunity to think about that kind of thing, that's who I feel I am, is that guy that maybe he's not in the foreground, maybe in the background, that's doing things to help players play the game the way they want to play the game. So Chris gave me permission to be argumentative. So
That is true.
Here we
okay.
go.
Define meta.
Meta, as in my interpretation, is the most popular archetypes and decks that at least I have seen. It's very difficult to define, especially in this format where we don't have pro tours or anything of that kind. And tournaments are, at least large scale online big promotion tournaments, are still pretty new to the scene. So for me, the old meta that we're going to be talking about, at least, is more so just our experiences with what we saw frequently up until here recently, maybe within the past couple months or so, since there weren't any really big broadcasted tournaments before that point.
The only reason why I bring that up is I think it was Voltaire or somebody like that basically talks about to have a valid argument, you have to first define the terms. So if we're going to be talking about meta and what that means, I think you bring up a good point about our impressions, so our experiences, which collectively is one thing. Individually, I've experienced the last 2 years differently than either two of you, and then collectively that would be what I would be consider to be the previous meta, is that combined shared experience. So how far back you want to go?
Well, for me, I started playing the format, 2 years ago, I think. So that's about as far back as my experiences go, outside of playing like Weavers against EDH decks.
I mean, if I could throw 2 cents in there, I think 2 years is actually a perfect amount of time because that'll say when we start, like the format, in my opinion, from as long as I've played, started to evolve into where we've gotten to now. So I really think it's a pretty spot on reference about 2 years back from now.
Mm. So a little history for you, and Dallas, you'll remember this fondly, I hope. This month, actually, June, is the 2-year anniversary of the infamous Decklist database Word document that was basically a Google Docs doc that had basically our I don't want to say mantra, but how we perceived the format, how it should be played, and then getting into a table that had some sample deck lists. And I even think on that early doc, we had combos listed. Like, you could see flicker combos, and I think the title board combo was listed out. So that way new players could get just a snapshot in a document of what the format looked like back then. And of course, if you also recall, I think every deck listed on that was a combo deck, right?
Sounds about right.
So
Old school.
So that gives us a great kind of starting point. When new players come in, my observation, when new players come into CPDH, they're usually coming from 60 card popper or competitive EDH. In both of those formats, not to say that beatdown doesn't exist in 60 card, but in both of those formats, combo is a pretty universal way to end the game for everybody at the same time. So in those early days when the community was really small, that was the pretty much the jumping off point, and universally thought, maybe incorrectly, that that's how you ended the game, was killing everybody at once, yada, yada, yada. So not much room. So this is the first instance of this word, innovation, right? Not much room for innovation and moving the meta forward. So, and feel free to, I'll just keep talking if you let me. So, from that point, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I played a simple combo. I'm a simple man with simple dreams.
Yeah.
I played a card that said draw a card, then I played lightning bolt at
with good
someone's
hair.
face.
Yeah.
That was my
With-
my two
yeah.
card combo.
No doubt. So the word, so getting to that innovation point, right? So now that I'm talking, I'm a very verbal thinker. So I'll say something and be like, "Oh, that's a hard no," or it's like, "That's a great idea." So innovation is the key. And then how do we invite change in an innovative way for affecting the meta and moving the meta? I was going to say forward, but in a direction, because it could be backwards, sideways, left ways, up ways, down ways, what have you. So how do we invite change to move the meta, move the needle, that sort of thing? So that's a good question. If you want to circle on that, or we can go somewhere else. What would you like?
One thing that I do want to mention for previous meta, you kind of touched on it, but it was a lot of combo decks, and I think, in my experience at least, Ley Weaver, Lore Weaver, and Tatiova were just kind of the absolute boogeymen of the format that everyone was scared of. Is it Guild Mage as well? Those three decks were kind of like the holy trinity from my perspective. It was like, these are just the decks. I remember I joined the very first time I joined a Discord server. I played in a game. The first time I played a competitive game, I was playing Weavers, and I got asked why I was playing one of the best decks in the format, and they weren't like looking for that competitive of a pod. And I was like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know. I just
You scumbag."
This deck looked good, so I was gonna play it at a competitive table." But just really strong combo decks. Games took fairly long, just because like everyone was playing blue for me, and it was like 2 Tatiovas and a Weavers at the table, and then maybe a Zada or something of that kind. So it was just like a lot of counter spells and a lot of biding your time and trying to find the right moment to combo that
Yeah.
slowed games down.
Well, there was very little pressure on your life total, which is kind of like the segue to the innovation, right? So once we started introducing life total pressure, now whatever that looks like, whether I actually believe, it was mid range. Mid range was the predominant archetype, so we had to work our way to aggro. Now, I think incorrectly looking back, people look at the summer of 2022 as the summer of aggro, but I think it's actually the summer of mid range. It was just expressing itself. That's how people were seeing it. It was getting hit in the face with, big creatures. So I think that's what kind of made that transition is the introduction of life pressuring items, objects, commanders, what have you, to the game that actually made those combo decks. Because you're right, it was basically Blue X format, and all you had to do was just wait. They would make jokes about what's that island cycler that flies?
Shoreline Ranger.
Yep.
So they would make jokes about killing people with Shoreline Rangers. I'm sorry if that's your threat. I guess. I mean, I'd rather do Dargo things, right, Chris?
I don't know what a Dargo is.
Sure you do.
But yeah, no, Shoreline Ranger was legitimately a card that could potentially be cast by Tatiova decks.
Mm-hmm.
And try to end the game. That's how long some of those games would take.
Like, I had 4 and 5 hour games. Occasionally, not frequently. The average was probably between 2 and 3 hours in those early days. I remember that well because I was editing that video by hand.
Yeah. Sybraxis Spectre was viable for a reason, and that's the reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so that's a great point, because Spectre is probably, and that's the thing, people that were around during that time remember Spectre fondly, very fondly. I mean, you played that deck 1,000 times, and you worked on it, perfected it, talking about innovations, right? So basically you were doing the things that you needed to do to tune the deck in a lot of ways to be meta hate or meta deck, anti-meta, what have you. So it's through those efforts of yourself, and I'm trying to remember some of the other, I think it was at that time that we saw our first Aethersworn Sphinx, and what's another one? Oh, what was that Simic turtle that basically liked to
I know what you're
draw
talking
a card
about.
whenever you cast a
power
6 CMC
5
or higher.
Yeah, power 5. That was a weird
draw a card.
I don't even know what it's called. That was a weird card.
Snap.
But,
Snap, I think.
We don't know. We'll have to find. We'll put that up in the video at a later point.
Well, I mean, to that end, right? So that deck was having success, because I mean, okay, we base 10, right, is the terminology we used to use back in the day when we're talking about interaction. So base 10 counter spells. So if every combo deck had the base 10 counter spells plus like a couple of bounce spells, what have you, they had 14 to 15 pieces of interaction, right? So after a while, so this turtle, where it was showing that it had legs, is that after a while the combo player has to stop using its counter spells to stop the threats and hold back 1 or 2 to protect its combo on its combo attempt. So at a certain point, you reach critical mass, and those big creatures start coming in and start wrecking face, because at some point they have to pull back, right? So it's interesting. Like, I say this now, and people that have been in the current meta that are playing now in the last 6 months are looking at me at the screen right now going, that sounds weird. It's because it was. But to the whole point of this video and the evolution of where we were to where we've come from. And eventually, as those big beefy decks that had like, basically blue, green, big value creatures that could also play counter spells, that sort of thing, that morphed into the mid-range summer, which gave way to aggro, basically fall, into combo winter, which is where Puzzles Gretchen won the Budget Brews tournament. Like it's all this natural progression that you would see in any other meta in any other format. So that brings up an opportunity. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I like to throw a little 2 cents out there at you, Puzzle. So I like hearing things straight from the horse's mouth, right? Because we've spoken about privately and things of that nature about your Spectre deck specifically. And Clay brought up some fantastic points of like how good that deck was back in the day. But to settle some discussions, would you play that today?
Absolutely not. Not the build I had.
Correct.
I've been working on potentially revamping it, but it struggles so much currently. Just having 3 pips in the cost, the game plan is inherently control and slower mid-range stuff, and it's just a bit too slow. It can't deal with 2 Dargos at the table, which is something I
Not
absolutely
unlikely.
despise.
Yes.
But yeah, it can happen, and I hate that. But like combo decks can deal with that, because like you can just win faster. Sidraxa Spectre, the way I had built it, just can't do that, and the ways I've tried to build it now still just can't keep up with aggro tables.
I mean, so that brings us into the next subject, round 2, the present. We're already talking about the present now, how this deck could, now I'm not discrediting the deck at all, it has viability still. If we do work on it, or you work on it, there is a chance, or somebody else does, that we could bring it back, or they could bring it back. So I'm not discounting it and calling it impossible, but as of right now, we'll put it to the side and we'll talk about what we have now. And you already brought it up. Dargos, Guts, Third Paths, Abdels. I mean, these weren't there before. I'll throw a little one out there. Amber, right? There's so much diversity now in the present. And honestly, I'm very proud about that. I think it's absolutely fantastic, all the different things we've seen recently. And Clay is looking at the data and things of that nature. What do you think about that? Like, what are your thoughts about how diverse the meta has become in the present?
So I think that's a testament to, number one, I think it's a testament to communication. So I know that's the weird answer that I'm going to provide, but bear with me. So people that are in these communities, so if you're an alien and you just arrived on planet CPH, let me tell you that all of these communities are basically satellites of the same organism, and we all know each other, work with each other, communicate with each other, and all that. Some better than others. Home base. But to that end, we're always working with each other, like picking each other's brains, like, hey man, I was thinking about this. Do you think it's dumb? The right answer to that question is like, okay, either A, I see the value in what you're trying to do and I'm unsure of whether or not it's going to be effective, you should go for it. Or, hey, I really don't know, you should go for it. The end of that should always be the same answer: is you should go for it. You should try. You should do it. So the reason why we have this much diversity now, long story longer, back to the origin point, is because I feel Dallas and Chris and Islane and like, Ryan and all these other folks are constantly like challenging other folks in the community, like, hey, that's a great idea. You should do it. Like, do it, do it, do it, do it. And we're pushing each other. Now, on top of that, we have league results that are informing choices. We have tournaments that are coming up that are informing choices. You know, we have all of these things that's being communicated in this ecosystem.
So
Uh,
I'm writing my notes here. I'm writing my notes. What I'm hearing from you is specific players. I wrote this down earlier. I'm a bit old. I'm trying to read it and squinting a little bit here. So specific players assist smiley
now for the
face.
argument. Hold on. Disclaimer: if you have any small children in the room, please obscure their eyes and ears. Mama and Daddy are about to fight.
I put a smiley face. How is that so wrong?
So I'll preface what Chris is pointing to on his page, because we talked about this earlier in the day. So I'm saying individual personalities working cooperatively within the community, projecting a theme of cooperation and just do it, right? You can do anything. In fact, Ratatouille, anyone can cook, right? I know it sounds absurd, but like, how do you know it's going to fail unless you try, right? And each one of us have had a conversation with the other, talking about like, hey, you know, I don't know if this thing will work, man. Put the reps in. Let's get it. Let's get that money, you know, that sort of thing. So the thing that Chris and I were talking about earlier was actually having representative people representing certain lists and that sort of thing. And
archetypes as well. Archetypes as well.
Ooh. Let's dial that back. So this is why this is a bad idea. And the example he's going to use, and I'll go ahead and put it out there. So this is the Malcolm Dargo guy. This is the Malcolm Dargo guy.
You can't steal my thunder. You have to let me explain this, because this blows up all of your arguments, right?
Okay.
Because if there wasn't a specific Malcolm Dargo guy, no one could ever speak to you, because you don't exist. But because you do exist, we can have that conversation. See, and this is what makes this topic so very interesting for all of us here, because we feel a bit differently, but we always correlate to the same goal, which is actually really, really great about the community as a whole. I'm going to throw that 2 cents out there at you guys. So it's always positive, even though we're going to sound like we're arguing here and stuff like that. Sure, maybe we are, but it's all in fun and games at the end of the day, which is enjoyable. But shooting back now, so we could lay this debate out for you guys, is I'm a firm believer of, if I want to go to a tournament and I want to play Malcolm Dargo, and there is sadly only one. Now, I hope there's more in the community, but as of this moment in time, there's one and one only, and you're looking at him. Good old Clay here. He is our Malcolm Dargo guy. So with that said, if I have the opportunity to pick his brain, I'm going to do it, right? Similar to Bobby and Puzzle here. He picked his brain and then had success. So like, the facts don't lie. He was able to pick his brain and be like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Puzzle's like, because because that. And then Bobby had success. Now, that's not saying his success was only due to Puzzle, obviously, right? But it's player skill and things like that. But without those 2 cents, things may get lost in translation. Same with you, Clay. Whether you want to be or not, you're that guy.
Okay, here we go. So, as a card-carrying anthropologist, I disagree, and I'll tell you why. So, we figured out, I'm going to use a correlate example, but you'll understand where I'm going. So, we have figured out archaeologically how the Clovis people made their spear points, because we have taken their flakes from their cobbled stones that they've busted pieces off, and we've reconstructed that. We don't need them here to tell us how they did it. We can just put the pieces back together and pretty much figure it out. So using that example, now in a perfect world, let's pause. In a perfect world, if I'm jovial and personable and the guy who's the knowledgeable person on the deck, and I'm willing to give my information and stuff like that, it works out. That's an ideal scenario. However, not every Magic player feels that way about their tech. In fact, you have a lot of Magic players that don't even share their list because they feel like, sharing it's going to like give away some competitive advantage or whatever. So given that, if you have, I think lists are important. Hell, I even think primers are important, though you can't force people to write primers. So at a bare minimum, I would suggest that just having access to a list, hell, if you know anything about me, when I pick up somebody's list, in fact, your gut leader list from the time that I copied it a few months ago, card for card is in that box. Card for card. I will not make changes to that list until I figure out what you did. Not you telling me exactly like, yeah, I did this, blah, blah, blah. Because what may happen is the reason why you do something or have a card choice may not align with the card choice that I would pick. Now, I might find a different, or I might find both ways. I might find a different use for a different card than you intended, right? Or different use for a card that you intended, or I might find a new way with a card that that you already included as well. So like, no, that's the same thing twice. Anyway, the point being, I will not make alterations to another person's list until I've played it and get comfortable with it, know it backwards and forwards and that sort of thing. So maybe that's just the way that I learn. Sure, I've got access to you. I can ask you. I can even get you to give me more information that you provided in the primer. Hell, I love you. I don't even look at the primer. I just play the list.
You just hit on what I was gonna say next. You said you can't force people to write a primer. You also can't force them to read it.
Yeah. So I mean, to that end, I mean, I think we can agree that having helpful people in the community helps the community move forward, especially when these archetypes and these specific lists are concerned, where those things are concerned. But at the end of the day, like, there's my own personal thing against clout chasing individuals who sit there, and I've seen it in the CDH community, and I know you two have as well. Somebody will rest their laurels on a list, and they'll control everything about that list, and everything's got to be about them and not about the commander, not about the gameplay, not about the innovation, not about the stat, the list of cards itself. It's all about them and not the deck. So if I had a bias, that would be the bias against having a personality associated. I'd rather have knowledgeable people like Dallas. I can ask him anything. Hell, he was touted on PDH Pod as being the combo guy. Hell, I can ask Dallas about anything, and he'll give me valid answers based on his perspective on aggro, on mid-range, on control, on anything. I mean, he has his favorite things that he likes to do, but what I'm getting at is
Malcolm, baby, Malcolm.
Yeah,
I know my man down there, Malcolm.
Yeah, no. So, yeah, but what I'm getting at is that Magic has a personality problem, and disassociating lists from bad personalities is probably better than associating lists with personalities in general. So
well, now that we know you're a bad personality, we'll move on from that.
What a dick!
No, but so kind of caveating on what you're saying, I'd like to throw in there one thing that I've noticed about Pauper that is a little bit more difficult than other formats is the fact that it is difficult. And that's one of the other reasons why I think associating with the individual helps a lot, because we've had this discussion as well, Clay. I have played your Malcolm Dargo, and the first time I looked at it, I was like, "What is this hot doo doo I'm
No,
looking at?" I'm like, "This is just garbage. What is this?" And I was like, I was talking to old Dallas here, and I was like, "Bro, this guy tells me that this deck is good. Am I missing something here?" But then you put up a top four result with it. So I'm over here looking like I got a big old question mark over my head. Like, duh.
Mhm.
Like, so that's what makes it so difficult. Some of these decks are so difficult to play. And I think it really assists being able to pick brains. Now, a positive thing you did say, which I love that you said this, was that a lot of us are not one lane. I could go to you and talk about the Malcolm deck. I could go to me and talk about Armix. I could go to
Mhm.
you, talk about Armix. We're just gonna keep skipping puzzle here. I'm gonna go to me.
yeah, no one knows what I'm known for, so like,
uh, well, we'll say
But
Spectre.
but I mean, to that, to juxtapose those things against each other, like I would much rather. So in my okay, I'm gonna say something that's likely true, but I'm not meaning it as a braggadocio thing. Like
not controversial opinions.
Okay,
I
editor, put a big exclamation mark right here in the screen right now.
uh I was, let's see, the competitive Pauper Commander meta was started 4 months before I joined Homebase. So I was at the cusp of this thing. I've been here since the beginning. Not the beginning, but like since the beginning. And to that end, it has been my humble experience that having people in the format that are welcoming and generally knowledgeable, not just on one thing, but generally knowledgeable and willing to help is much more beneficial because if I'm honest, we were getting away from, you know, Tatiova specialist, is a guild mage specialist. We were getting away from those individual peers of, knowledge for a particular deck. Like there was no way to innovate because they were the owners and damn it, it had to be their way. Well, so for you to want to reintroduce that concept, I have to give you a little pushback because, like, that's the thing. I say your gut leader, it's yours and Aaron's, right? So
Of course, yeah.
that's the list that I copied. Now, I think you would agree that now that the art has been created and been released out into the world, it's everybody's gut leader. So as they start to, play in their own metas and change it and add and subtract and doing the things they need to do to play against their own pods at their own places and all that stuff, it becomes less your list and more their list.
Oh yeah,
You know,
100%,
so
100%.
I can
That, but continue.
go ahead. What was that?
I was gonna say, while I understand where you're coming from, I do think that having those people who are a representative of a deck or a specialist of that deck, like for me, obviously it's Gretchen. And I get a lot of people who actually come to me with questions about Gretchen.
Mhm.
And now that so many people are actually playing it, to my surprise, they'll ask questions about why cards are in the deck. And when I tell them, they'll go, well, that's not true for my meta. And I'm like, that's great. So cut it.
Mhm.
Like, you don't have to play my list.
Mhm.
You are free to change it. So I think having people who are specialists in the deck, but not like overtly attached to everyone running their exact build, is more so what I would like to see. So I still like the personalities being associated with it. They just have to be, not attached to forcing
And-
people to play theirs.
And to be fair, so to cover one point really quickly, so everyone here in this video would agree that the list that we develop in the game, the meta that we're pushing for is the air quotes open meta. It's meant to be an overarching between everything, and it's like the Force, right? It penetrates and goes through, and yeah. So that's the meta that we're building for, is this proverbial open meta. When someone takes a list and they take it home and they play it at their LGS and start making changes, now they're doing it for, conversely, a closed meta, their own personal meta. So that's one distinction that I wanted to make. And then damn it, I forgot the other one. I should have wrote it down.
Well, so I'll hit you with this one. I completely agree with that. The one thing that I think, because of the past, that's kind of been, I don't want to say ignored, but from my perspective, is a bit ignored. And I agree with you, Clay, on the fact that you're talking about, like, from the past, we only had X people associated with these decks. But there's so much more now than there was then. So before we had deck A, B, C, D. Now we have deck A through Y.
Mhm.
So the fact that we have deck A through Y is so much more, and it's so much more complex.
So this was the point that I was going to remember, and it plays directly into that point. So the reason why we have that diversity, or not the reason, but a contributing factor as to why we have that, is because Magic players, true to form, like flavors of the week. So I guarantee you, the deck you started playing, Chris, like 8 months ago, you might still have that put together in Moxfield or in paper or something like that. But that's not the list that you were working on 2 months after that, 4 months after that, 6 months after that in present day. You know, people evolve and move to different things. So when the Dallas, if you remember, the DDB project was live, when we were actively trying to build a functioning deck list database. One of our chief concerns behind the scenes was orphaned lists. So what happens is, like, and at the rate, now granted, not every set brings new spice. Check. Got it. But when they're releasing 15 sets a year, and new
comes out.
and injecting new cards in, and to that point, like we've been getting new sets, like, they don't stop, but we're still discovering spice from like 4 or 5 sets ago. Like, we the innovators have not caught up to the release, because we're slowly trying to figure out what all these pieces are. So I would argue that if everybody played the same 1 or 2 lists and that's all they played, then yeah, like having a representative person who's a knowledgeable person for that. The only downside to that is, boom, bust, get hit by a bust, boom, you're dead. Okay, now who's it?
Well, that was dark.
That's what you get.
That was a sad South Park ending.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, I would much rather communicate with, like I can't talk about Gretchen the way that Dallas can talk about Gretchen, but I can get you 80% of the way there. Like,
75.
Shut up.
65.
Have you seen the decks I play?
Yeah, Malcolm.
Yeah.
So, speaking of that, you actually were able to bring us right into our last subject, Clay. You started talking about the sets that have been releasing, how much we've keep pushing forward and forward and forward and keep moving to the future. So I would like to bring up our last 2 subjects, which one is, before we move to the future topic, I would like to talk to our close future RIW event. Coming up right here, June 24th. Let's kind of discuss that meta. Since we're speaking about meta, we're talking about it. Me and Dallas here made one huge mistake about the Sanctuary event. We were like, Tatyova will be there, Tatyova will be there, Tatyova will be there. No one will play Gretchen. 4 Gretchen show up. We kind of missed that. So what do you think is going to be there? Either one of you guys, like, hit me. Like, what? Like, I only know one deck that's going to be there for sure. Malcolm Darga.
Yeah.
Go. You can go ahead, Clay.
Right on.
I'll let you go, and then I'll disagree with you.
So I firmly expect 15 to 20% of the meta to be homebrews. We're going to be, for those of you who don't freaking know by now, Dallas can't come, but myself and Chris will be in Detroit, and there's going to be a bunch of personalities from the CPDH community, well, from the larger PDH community that are going to be there. And we're going to be bringing, those are playing, we're going to be bringing known CPDH brews, but I firmly expect of the people that are from there, and that's their home turf, that 15 to 20% of that will probably be something that they made up for the tournament, that they, like I don't want to pick on Finn, but like Finn was the outsider at the Sanctuary, the notable outsider. Not to say that doesn't have potential. That's not what I'm getting at. But
it's a rogue deck.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. So
Yu-Gi-Oh terms coming in clutch.
So 15 to 20% of the meta is going to be rogue. I feel, and because it's a home turf advantage, and that sort of thing. So from there. There's probably going to be a mixture of stuff that comes from the content creation that's offered currently online. There's going to be some ideas generated from, Possibility Storm or connoisseurs, or anybody who's putting out video gameplay content. There's going to be some tier list, stuff there, because people, for whatever reason, subscribe to that. So
another day.
Yeah, another day. Well, hit us with an actual deck. Literally hit us with do you think Abdel is going to show up? Right? There's probably going to be. Yeah,
there's probably going to be one. Yeah, there's probably going. They'll probably. I think that there'll be a Gretchen. There'll be a. I don't know. There'll be a Simic deck.
No, you can't do that. No. We were wrong. It's okay to be wrong sometimes.
There wasn't even a black deck at the last tournament, though. Yeah. So, maybe guessing colors isn't so off base. But...
Yep. So.
But no, to that, some people like Initiative, people like Monarch. If I fully expect there to be black and red at this event, probably like an Azra odds maker. I don't know, it's kind of, what's the Mayhem Devil, that's what I'm thinking of. Potentially something as old school as Mayhem Devil. I think you'll have a lot of partners and backgrounds.
Well, I'm hoping stuff like Mayhem Devil shows up. The one thing that me and Puzzle have spoken about in a lot of our videos is the time frame. The time frames always hurt decks of that nature, unless you are a dedicated pilot that does change results, right? Like the amount of triggers, the amount of this, the amount of that. You have to be able to go through them very quickly. So I do hope, and this is going all the way back to the specialists, those specific players, if we have that one Mayhem Devil person, and they come and just destroy the event, right? I would love to see something like that, right? As a prime example, the last CEDH event was won again by Teferi, the mono blue Teferi. That no one plays that but that one person,
one guy, yeah,
one person, but he's won twice.
He won the same twice, twice, yeah.
So I love that. I love seeing that. I'm a huge fan of that. And I'm hoping we do get that in our community as a whole.
I think there's going to be more draws than you hope for, because the problem with CPDH tournaments is there haven't really been a whole lot of CPDH tournaments. Correct. So there's no real way to know how your deck is going to perform within a certain amount of time.
Exactly.
So I do think that we're going to have, probably, a representative amount of draws, maybe 10-15% of matches will go to draw.
Well, you
you
got to
know.
get your feet wet, though, right? Like, you have to at least get out there and experience it for yourself, which is not a big deal. In my opinion, I think without actually going out there, in the Fin deck was a perfect example, right? I'm very happy that that said individual came out and tried it, right? I
Mhm.
hope they come out again and try it, truth be told, because you
Well, they
learn.
were trying to metagame. I truly believe, without asking them and not knowing, for real, I think that they were legitimately trying to metagame the meta. I think that they were thinking that, okay, poison, plus death touch, evasion, right, reduces the amount of damage that you have to do. Game has to go quicker, right?
Yep.
So I truly believe that that was an attempt to uh, perceive what the metagame was going to be, and then just kind of take it down in an angle of attack that no one expected. Jesus,
Yeah. No,
my
no,
my
no.
enchilada's coming back.
No, I definitely agree with that. Like, I I'm a big fan of things of that nature. Like, I love all
Mm.
the rogue decks that come out there. I mean, once upon a time, Gut Leader was a rogue deck, right? Like, once upon a time, a lot of
Now
these known
every
decks.
now every
So,
aggro deck is compared to rogue, our gut leader. Yeah.
yep. So, I mean, hit us with it, Dallas. What do you got? What do you think? Do
All
you
right.
think Gretchen is coming with us? Like, do you
I
think we're seeing it?
guarantee Gretchen is gonna be there.
Oh,
Clay was a
we got the
little,
guarantee. Oh
yeah,
man, I am
100%.
jotting that down. I'm jotting
Um,
that down.
Clay was a little light on his, so I'm gonna go really hard on mine and just be way too specific and get a lot of stuff wrong.
Uh
There's gonna be
oh.
at least 3 Gretchens.
Oh, okay. We'll
There's
make sure
gonna
that
be
people argue in the comments down below with you. That's something.
4
But only
minimum.
using words like stupid.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Um, 4 minimum Malcolm X, because Malcolm's amazing.
Hang on, I'm writing this
Um,
down. I'm writing this down. Here we go. Here we go. Continue.
2 Abdels, exactly 2.
What color,
Um,
Abdels? What color?
Mm.
Obviously both blue.
Oh,
Um,
oh, only blue. Oh.
maybe, maybe one black white Abdel shows up.
Mm.
Maybe. Um, I bet there's gonna be some rogue decks like, oh, what's a spicy one? Liara's gonna show up.
Ooh,
Commander
yeah,
Liara
yeah, yeah.
Warrior.
Quintorius.
Leah.
Probably not Quintorius. There's definitely gonna be
the disregard. Just get out of here, man. What are you talking about?
Pull out.
at least 3 people playing new commander from the Lord of the Rings set because they
Ooh,
think
yeah.
they're cool.
Yep.
I would appreciate that one. I'm not gonna lie.
People are going to be playing more initiative and monarch because they think the ring mechanic is going to make them better.
Mhm.
I personally don't think the ring tempt is great right now, but obviously I have literally never seen it in a game of CPDH. So take that opinion with a great assault, but I don't think it's going to make monarch and initiative that much better. But I think people are going to try it just to find out. There's going to be some TPI to
Yeah.
protect in
Oh,
those
TPI.
instances.
Yeah, TPI.
I'm
still gonna be
interested to
gut.
see which TPI shows up. Is it going to be the control variant? Is it going to be an aggro variant? Is it going to be a combo variant?
Well,
like
aren't
that's
they the
what
same? Aren't they the same thing? Don't you leverage your control pieces into aggro?
Hells no.
I mean,
spicy take.
if you're
Hells no.
I don't
mean,
think a control deck that wins with damage and an aggro deck are the same.
Okay, because I think what we're really talking about is TPI is a mid-range deck.
I think it's a control deck.
Yeah,
but
it's like I agree. I believe it's also a control
I just
deck,
don't think it's
but
fast enough to be aggro at all, and it usually isn't winning games in the mid game from what I've seen. It effectively wins the game. Whenever it's going to win the game, it effectively wins in the mid range turns, but it doesn't typically close out games until more what I would expect from control from what I've seen. So I classify it more as a control deck.
yeah. I mean, you said exactly what I would have said.
I'm
Like
I'm just
exactly
being
that.
argumentative to be argumentative. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
As,
it uses cards like Ophidian Eye to gain card advantage, right? While it slowly
Yeah.
builds a wall. So
Yeah.
it leverages the creatures as a wall instead
Yeah.
of an aggro
It's
element.
it's no different than the goblin based Torwaki that I built. It's no different. It
Yeah.
just produces tokens more readily.
Yeah.
one more rogue deck for me, and then I'll pass it on to Chris. Crackling Drake.
Yeah.
Oh, and Viscopa Guild Mage. I forgot about that one.
Oh,
Those are going to
God.
show up.
I
Man.
think Viscopa's.
got the fevers.
Well, with that list, I
Our big
honestly,
list.
you know, I don't think Gut is going to show up. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's
Okay.
yeah, I think there's more. It's going to be more combo, and I mean combo as in just I'm going to stick to my gut feeling and not Gut itself, but Tatiovas and Weavers. I think that's what's going to show up here because if
So
this
to-
is going to be a
Yeah.
oh, go for it, hit
No,
me
to
with
pivot
it.
off of that, I'd like to expand on that. So if gut represents a high risk reward type scenario, like I think safer decks will probably be the likely play. Is that they want something that feels comfortable, even if they've never played it before competitively. If it looks comfortable on paper, and gut is definitely one of those lists that encapsulates a certain amount of putting yourself out there and feeling comfortable on the edge. So
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Like that's exactly what I was going to get at. Like some people are more comfortable if this is going to be your first event, they may not be comfortable playing aggro where you just put it all on the table, right? They're going to try to play solitaire and not have to know, threat analysis, right? They're not going to know I have to kill this player. I'm just going to ignore this player because I don't know if these people are going to be honest with me. This is my first event. I'm nervous, like things like that. So I'm going to lean to the heavier combo side if I was a betting man because of the tournament, the Sanctuary event. I think a lot of Gretchen's going to show up. I think Simic decks are going to be everywhere. Everywhere. I don't think Abdel is going to show up at all. None. That's my hot take. No Abdel.
it's not that Abdel is not difficult. Okay, this
That's
is
right.
a lie.
He said it.
Nah.
it's a- So Abdel conceptually, Abdel is not a difficult deck to play. Basically, you're laying out pieces as you draw them and trying to develop a cumulative advantage with those pieces. So conceptually, Abdel is a very easy deck to understand. Now, negotiating those play patterns while reading the table, that is the difficult thing with Abdel. That is the challenging part. So I think people showing up with or without Abdel, I don't think they'll know how to necessarily play it, because there aren't too many experts out there. Hell, you'll love this. Abdel really wasn't even a good deck until like a few months ago. So to that,
Hot take, but
well, I mean, to that end, like it took any deck, anything out there to kind of circle back to the beginning. Like any list takes a massaging, some working, some intimate knowledge. Working with the cards, figuring the things out, and that's a little bit more than just throwing cards together in a Moxfield list.
Well, it also
Like, hey, yeah.
Well, it also brings up a point too, right? Like the one reason I say no Abdel specifically is when you have 7 things underneath Abdel, you must trigger everything in proper order. You must say what you're doing. You must announce it. If you're not used to that, it's kind of like the old school Miracle Player problem in Legacy. Not knowing how fast you need to go. You need to be very quick with it. You need to be announcing everything as fast as you can so you don't go to time. So like Weavers and decks like that are more rewarding. So you don't have to go trigger, 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 and so on, right?
Mhm.
So those decks, which I know Puzzle already knows what I'm thinking right now. Gretchen, I find to be a fiend at this, to be our Thrasios comparison. And
Mhm.
I've said this to him many times where we're talking about Gretchen takes an overabundance of game actions, especially
Mhm.
when what's the card called? Puzzle, the one that
Moro Breeze Color.
no,
Mhm.
the land untapper,
The,
the one that
the single
untaps the land.
mana untaps on everybody's turn.
Yes,
Oh, Urban Burgeoning.
Yes,
yes,
that's it.
that just gives you so. I've already seen it to where I've played against Puzzle here, and we're playing a game, and he's like untap trigger, response to you playing a spell, tap trigger. I have 8 mana floating. Reveal the card. Put this into play. Do this. Do this. Oh, you're passing turn. Cool. Untap trigger, and you're just taking game actions. And you're taking so many game actions. So I think certain decks will be better for certain people to play, and I'm kind of banking a lot of my statements on that specifically. So,
Uh, my counterpoint to Abdel. Uh,
oh, here we
I
go. Here we go. Hot take.
I'm
Hot
sure
take.
there is at least one Yu-Gi-Oh combo player like me who understands how to order their triggers. Because in Yu-Gi-Oh, the way the chain links and triggers work, you it's basically like any combo deck in Yu-Gi-Oh is like Abdel, where you're trying to set up a combo and then stack your triggers in a specific order because in Yu-Gi-Oh you can only interact with the top layer of the stack basically.
Mm-hmm.
So in Yu-Gi-Oh, a lot of combo decks are trying to get 2 or 3 triggers so that they can block off the important stuff with unimportant stuff. So Abdel isn't trying to do that exactly, obviously, because that's not how the stack works in Magic. But it's a lot of the same stuff where you get 3 to 5 triggers, and you have to know how to order them, what order you want them to resolve, and what targets. But if you understand that fundamental concept, I really don't think Abdel is complicated.
Oh, I
Mm.
agree. I agree. But that's part of the problem, right?
You're talking
Knowing
about
when.
1% of the population.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Knowing when, knowing how.
Combo players
Yeah.
will play Abdel.
Yep. I still don't think it's gonna show up, but that's my hot take. But on that, I think we're kind of wrapping it up home, you guys. What do you think?
Future?
Yeah, we're
Future.
yeah, back not back to the future, future and forward. What do you I mean, I'm going to start with you, Clay, since you're our guest here today. What do you foresee as like I mean, I've been really happy and really proud to see all of these new decks being innovated. And I have one deck that I really want to talk about, but I was told to not talk about it. But I will say that it is a very spicy list that will be at a tournament near you. And you
Yes.
will know when this deck shows up. Similar to Dargo Keleth. That was a deck that was like not on people's radar and really kind of made a stink in the Sanctuary event. So I'm really love to see things like that happen. And I believe with the way the format is, and the innovations that we have, we're to
Mhm.
continue to move forward with that.
So, I'm going to try to, it's not wordplay as it were. So, by moving forward, I feel like more holes will be filled. So, Dargo Keleth represents a commander pair that has existed at the same time as other commander pairs have existed. It's just no one has come along to develop that list. Now, as the format grows, as we get more interest and people start picking up things and starting to do things more, that's interesting to them, I think we're probably going to I think we're going to go through a phase of filling out the format. So not necessarily making any advances in like hot tech or anything like that. But I think we're going to see a greater variety of things being tried, which as responsible stewards on our end, we are going to support and encourage. And that's folks like us pushing people to do things like that are going to be the immediate future of the meta, filling in those holes, trying new things that aren't from things that are already existing. The new stuff that comes out every 2 weeks, we'll get to that in 6 months.
Yep.
Hot take.
I can see that.
So that's the near future.
What
I could do some data stuff, but
Yeah.
It's too far.
Yeah. What do you got for us, Dallas? What do you think? I actually have one deck specifically, one commander specifically in mind for this one.
I think, especially if we get more partner-esque mechanics, they will always be being innovated. There's just so many decks from just one card, like Dargo and what? And there are so many options for just Dargo plus something else. Now, whenever you take into consideration all of those decks will always be evolving, similar to CEDH. I think obviously new spice, new cards, people are gonna play with them. That will always have an effect. But I think also moving forward, we're getting some pretty decent new forms of mana fixing. So I'm really hoping to see some really cool new 3 color options for the format, since we just don't have that many in the first place, and most of them aren't great when we do have them. So that's something I'm really looking forward to seeing. But
yeah,
those are just my general thoughts.
Yeah, so I'll be the specific one here between all of us. The one's I'm going to get real specific here. Commander Legends Boulder's Gate was a set that did wonders for our format as a whole. And I think the three of us here could completely agree with that. By the way, future episode, we're talking about Boulder's Gate and what it did for the format. But jumping back to what I'm talking about here, I feel that there were a lot of cards that were overlooked in that set as a whole because Abdel came in just like Miley Cyrus, like a wrecking ball, and just plowed in and just destroyed so many people's opinions about the rest of the set because of how ridiculous that card was. Cards like Gut were completely overlooked. Backgrounds were just overlooked. And I mean, it was a very weird time in the format, in my opinion. I don't know if Clay has any thoughts on that one, but
I'm sure Clay has plenty of thoughts as an RC.
Yep. But
backgrounds were overlooked to my ass.
Uncommon ones. But the card specifically that I think is in the process, because I see this a lot in local meta, but I also play it myself and have seen its power, is Amber Grizzle Omal. That card was completely overlooked at, and I have played against it. The card is a house. And I'm hoping by the end of this year, we're going to see that now become part of the meta as a whole. Doesn't matter what background you put with Amber. She's insane. She could go with literally any color. Pick a color, put it with her. She's red X. Doesn't matter. What do you got?
Something to note. Commanders with card advantage in the command zone are good. And that is a trend that we have seen across the entirety of the meta. The Tatiova and Crackling Drake from the very early days. Even Syntraxis Spectre, not card advantage, but card disadvantage for your opponents, was good because of that. Currently, you've got Abdel, which isn't card advantage in the command zone, but he is often drawing you cards and getting stuff back because of what he's flickering, and he's building bodies. You've got Gretchen, which has card draw. But we've also evolved more to where we have those super aggressive decks like Dargo and Gut that are just fast enough and have a strong enough win condition in their command zone that they don't need to draw as many cards. So those are the two big signals to me for if a deck is potentially competitive. strong card advantage in the command zone or just an absurd win condition.
Yep. And it's specifically Amber. So something that was a problem in the past was not being able to kill 3 opponents. And Amber specifically has you attack all 3 opponents. In fact, that's how it gets its card advantage. So being able to proactively hit your opponents and take them out together is a very huge part about that card. And I just wanted to kind of bring it to its attention because that was one of those cards that was heavily, heavily overlooked from Baldur's Gate. And I just think we're getting right to the cusp of it gonna start shining because I've seen lists with it. I've gotten destroyed more times than I can name by Amber decks, and I really think they're gonna be at a tournament near you.
As a closing thought, just because this is something that popped into my head, it's a little off topic, but I was thinking about decks that we all play, and I was trying to make a Venn diagram in my head, because whenever I think I see, like, Crackling Drake as the connector between you two, I see Dargo Kedis for me and Chris, and I'm not sure what to put for me and Clay.
It's
aside
Malcolm.
from
It's Malcolm.
X.
It has to
Just
be Malcolm X.
Malcolm in general. But is there any deck that all 3 of us play?
I play Tatiova. I play Weavers.
There's also Abdel for you guys. There's Weavers for us.
Yeah.
I don't think there's
But I
one
don't
that
know
the
if there's
3 of us.
anything that
Well-
all 3 of us play.
So there's one, but I do know that Clay gave up on it, and that's Dargo Kedis. So maybe we need to give him a couple beers like we do to you and have him play it.
So yeah, I
Our
that was-
4-player Dargo Kedis free for all. That's what
That
we're
was-
doing.
that was the second competitive deck that I built 2 years ago.
My last 3 Dargo Kedis games ended turn 5. By the way, I did not win either one of them. Oh, those were just horrific games. Turn 5,
yeah.
they were insane.
Any closing thoughts from you two? Clay, if you've got any other plugs you want to do?
No, well, I mean, okay, so here's the great unifying factor. So Gator has just agreed to be our librarian for CPDH Guide. Puzzle is the Discord admin for that particular Discord, and then we all of us contribute in some way to curating the information for CPDH.guide. It's there not only as a tool, and the reason why I bring it up in this creator space, we talk all the time about how I can help them leverage that information for the creative space, but also, like, it is the preeminent, source of, metagame data, thanks to you, and those submissions and stuff like that. It all goes towards this larger goal of helping to discover what this meta really is and provide some analysis on it. So on the front end, the back end, the left end, the right end, CPDH.guide.
Yep.
There it is.
Ooh, I got one last thing. This also just popped into my head. I want to say how healthy the meta is. As the finishing touches, the meta right now, you have your aggro, you have your combo, you have your control. We have it all. We have the mid-range. We have mono white decks that could win. We have so much variety in this format right now, and I'm very happy about that. So,
yeah. See you on the battlefield, guys.
Yep. All right, Dallas, take us home, my bro. Take us home.
Will do. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to go down, leave a like below, check out all of the links. We'll have Clay's stuff and everything he's involved in linked down below. Leave a comment if you have anything you want to let us know, or you can find us on our socials. And I hope you all have a great night. Yay!